Hello, everybody, and welcome to this podcast, which is called The Corridor of Uncertainty. The new abnormal was going through my head then, because we've been talking about the Strokes. But we're here. We have our Guinness. Cheers, Charlie. Cheers to the end of the Ashes. Thank God. Absolutely. The first note on our infamous doc is "It's over," and I think that's how we feel about it. But we've once again spruced up our area. I've now got a stand which isn't actually very good at being a stand because it's a bit far away from me and it's kind of broken, but it means I can hold a Guinness and have my laptop on my knee, which is a boon, isn't it?
Also, Johnny's got a headband on, a Graham Thorpe headband. I didn't actually tell you the story behind that.
Tell me the story behind it.
The late, great Graham Thorpe died last year, and the Oval Test, because he was a Surrey player, they did a big sort of charity drive for suicide prevention, because that's unfortunately how he did lose his life. And Joe Root scored 100 in that game, and he donned that headband as a celebration.
Nice.
Graham Thorpe was a big mentor of his.
I think I've seen
England
that, actually.
batting coach for many years. Now it's on Johnny's head. Not that one, but one of the other ones.
It'd be incredible if we somehow managed to get a hold of that one. I imagine it's probably possibly sold at auction or something, or in a glass case or something like that.
It actually contravened the laws around donning like a sponsored thing, because it is for a charity. It's for Mind, I believe. I think it says on the back.
Surely they didn't
turn your mind around so I can see. Oh no, it doesn't. It's for a charity. No action was taken, but yeah.
Good. I don't think action should have been taken. That would have been a bit.
Well, we'll talk about Usman Khawaja in a bit, and he is a man who has had action taken.
Action was taken
in pretty, well, not unfair, but in pretty just frustrating circumstances. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, and about the man Usman Khawaja. But what's first?
Well, the first thing to talk about is the fact that this series is over, finally over, as we've been saying. It hasn't gone very well for England. It hasn't gone very well, I feel, for the viewer either. So, Charlie, how are you feeling?
I think I am glad it's over. Not to be ungrateful, but I think because we've done this podcast, it's forced us to stay a bit more in the loop than maybe I would have done in past series. I've continued to watch a lot of this, and I'm glad I have. But it's not been great on any level really for England, or just in general, and it's felt extremely long. It has taken place over a longer sort of period of time than a 5-match series typically would these days, which is good because it means proper rest for the players. And, it's good that things don't get crammed into these tiny windows all the time. Opportunity
to go to nightclubs and
yeah, exactly. They've been up to all sorts before the series. It turns out.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, so that I'm not annoyed that this has had a little bit more room to breathe this series, but because we've known for a few weeks now the outcome, it has felt like a slow death.
Well, I remember you saying to me when we first sort of, again, it was on that Horsforth day, I believe, you told me about how cricket is very much a slow death, a slow, painful death. When you are playing badly, you have to sit and suffer already having known. It's like in snooker, when the frame is over, you sit in your chair and you watch the other player clear up, but then at least there's another frame within a minute, whereas this is like we can't get revenge on Australia for another 2 years.
Yeah, and I think this test was a good example of that happening within a test, which I think is what I was referring to, like in that conversation, is that England showed fight in the last couple of days, but as soon as I think Steve Smith turned up, or probably a little bit before this test was over, and you've still got like 2.5 days of viewing, as you've got 7 football matches worth of time left to watch just a game that you're going to lose unless something incredible happens, which it didn't this time.
No. So Australia won the Ashes. We've known that for a while, but we've got now our final score of 4-1. It's all done and dusted. And I suppose we should at least give them some sort of pat on the back. Well done. I hope you're happy with the money and all that. So Charlie, as you've written here, a word for Australia?
Yeah, a word for Australia, because I think this has been a very England-centric podcast, and it probably will be continue to be so, because we're going to, cover the England games predominantly. But Australia, I think the frustration has grown even more because this hasn't been Australia at their best. But I think you just have to tip your hat to Australia to say that even when they're not at the best, they can produce a 4-1 win against what is still, the third or fourth best Test cricket team in the world at the minute in England. And how do they do that? They do that with just relentless commitment and professionalism, something that we haven't seen from England in this tour. I think they just really recognise the moments, and when they need to just see a phase out or grind England down, and they've done so excellently. I think the supporting cast of bowlers have really grown into the series, and given Mitch Starc the help that they needed. Maybe you can say that Head, Starc and Carey, we'll get on to player of the series later, but you could maybe say that they're the only three players in the whole series who have had outstanding series, but they've been outstanding to such an extent that has carried them home. Yeah. And you sort of get the feeling that if it hadn't have been them, it would have been somebody else. So I think, a word for them, a word for Steve Smith, another Test match 100, done in his weird way with all his unconventional shots and his feet going nowhere, but somehow the hands are just always in the right place and the head's in the right place, perfectly still. And all his idiosyncrasies and him turning around. I caught up on the extended highlights earlier because there was quite a lot of this game that I missed. And the point he turned around, his entire back was just brown. And I was like, how has he done that? He's just been rolling around on the floor. And then the TV showed like a package of all his weird stuff, included like 3 clips of him ducking bounces where he was literally just rolling around on the floor. But, it works for him, and he's an absolute champion. He's second on the all-time list now of Ashes hundreds, behind only the great Don Bradman. He's sort of got the same thing with his record, or he used to have the same thing with his record, where his average against England was like 57, which was actually lower than his career average. It's now a little bit higher because he's had a bit of a drop-off, but even as he's struggled a little bit, as he's got older, his record against England and India is just absolutely immense.
Stayed intact. I remember you saying, possibly episode 1, episode 2, we were talking about Steve Smith having a particularly good test, and you said kind of just off the cuff and almost as an aside, he's a weird man, but he did really well. And I heard that. I wonder what's strange about him. And the more I learn, the more I see of him. I've seen that acoustic guitar video of him.
That's what I was about to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was like some Aussie fans on social media saying, we've won the Ashes, time to celebrate, and they pop open a bottle of champagne and they put that video on and just watch Steve Smith playing the guitar.
I think the one last word for the Australians I'd like to have before we move on is that a lot of this series has focused around England's drinking and England's culture, and it broke overnight that Harry Brook was involved in an altercation.
That was pre-Ashes, wasn't it?
That was in New Zealand, yeah. So that was the night before one of the games in New Zealand, of which Harry Brook is captain of the white ball team.
Oh dear.
He was in a fight with a bouncer.
Yeah.
But to be honest, what I wanted to say was that for all the talk about England's boozing, Australia like a drink as well. It's just as ingrained into their culture as it is ours.
They win games.
If not more. But they win games, but also, I've said this to you off air, at the minute, I'd rather go for a drink with the Australian team.
You did say that.
They're amiable, they're funny, they're humble. Yeah. This is how they come across anyway. And you hear them chat, and it's just like, you seem like a thoroughly decent chap, and like with a lot of self-awareness, despite the fact that you are superstars. Yeah,
absolutely. And they had, I've seen interviews with them. On social media, they get sports people to look back at classic moments of rivalries across the years. And we've spoken about the Stuart Broad not walking thing, and like 90% of that Australia team go, good on you, Broady. Just like that, we do the same thing. Like, at least they're honest about it, and they seem very genuine. Travis Head, I like him a lot. I like his facial hair particularly. Good man, powerful man. And yes, Charlie's going to be doing his team of the series, player of the series as well. We'll get onto that. But let's have a look now more kind of in depth and focused in on this final test, which England lost. Shock, horror. But one player did stand out for us, and that was Mr. Jacob Bethel, who scored a fantastic 150 plus. Was it 100? Did he end up on like 160 odd, I think? In the
154.
154. Yeah, so at least there was some silver lining.
Yeah, massive silver lining. I think if you could have asked England fans who they wanted to score 100 this game. Obviously, it's nice for Joe Root to get another one and further cement his legacy. But looking forward beyond this series, for Jacob Bethel to get his first class 100, not just first test 100, in the Ashes is immense, and he played extremely well. Again, it's the second innings of games. He's still averaging 9 in the first innings, which is something that needs addressing. I think if England could find a way to have Ollie Pope batting in the first innings and Jacob Bethel batting in the second innings, they would have a world-beating number 3. But
so when Top Gear used to sneak the Stig in,
yeah,
when they'd race against like Germany or something. If we could do that,
yeah. I mean, they're both diminutive. It's just that one of them has
blonde hair,
yeah, and one of them's ginger.
Yeah,
so
kind of hard to.
But maybe we might see substitutes one day. So maybe that's be a good use of England's substitutes. But yeah, anyway, so it's another second innings performance from him. But I think while I have said in a previous episode that I think for various reasons, each of those New Zealand second innings 50s were in low pressure moments, as low pressure as you can get in a test match for England batting at 3. And that the real high pressure moment that he'd faced against India didn't go well. I mean, you can't, despite the fact the series being over here, you cannot call this anything other than an extremely high pressure situation. England could have very easily folded to an innings defeat, and Zach Crawley was out first over, so he was in facing Mitchell Starc right away, and it was just a proper test match innings. It wasn't him hunkering down and not playing a shot like Ben Stokes did. It's not him charging down at everything like Harry Brook. Exactly, he showed nuance. Yeah. for a young player, he was very nuanced, and he really imposed himself on the Australians, and he showed that there's different ways to impose yourself in a test match, and it doesn't always mean trying to hit every ball for 4. It was just an incredibly measured, incredibly smart innings where he really picked off the bad balls. You saw him playing the cut shot a lot. He recognised better than any of the England batters have this series, apart from probably Joe Root, that you want to be playing with that horizontal bat, not that dangled 3/4 bat. He was playing cuts or he was playing drives. I think there was a little clip that BBC did, which I think really highlighted his ability in consecutive boundaries against Cameron Green. He pulled him off the front foot for 4, which is traditionally a back foot shot, and then he drove him off the back foot for 4, which is traditionally a front foot shot. Got through it. So I think if you can do both of those, and more importantly, pick the right balls to do them, then that's extremely promising.
And that just shows like a level of temperament but the fact that he showed it, in the Ashes, getting his first class 100 suggests that there's just a natural ability to read the game. Yeah,
and it's interesting because I think, there are a lot of eyes raised in the media at his initial selection, but I think one corner that he's always had the backing of is just ex-players who've seen him in the nets, and they just say, I don't know what it is. It's not translated to first-class cricket. Yeah, he averages like in the high 20s or something. But a lot of people whose opinion holds sway have said, this guy's got it. Yeah. It's the way he prepares, it's the way he trains, it's his temperament, it's his aura, if you want to say that.
So, I mean,
like Mark Goldbridge.
Yeah, exactly. We watched Mark Goldbridge. I've been watching a lot of Mark Goldbridge recently because of Amarim getting sacked. And he had a fantastic segment on his show today where he spoke about, just randomly says, now let's have a serious grown-up conversation here. Gary Neville's got aura. Jamie Carragher's got aura. You might say, I've got aura. And everyone's going, no, I don't. And then he goes, Ant and Deck have got aura. What?
I know, like little Brentism there at the end. But yeah, I would say that Jacob Bethel
has aura.
Has a bit of aura, and I think that...
more than Mark Goldbridge?
Yeah, and more than Ollie Pope to I feel bad that he's been ragged on more than anyone by us this series. But yeah, Ollie Pope just never showed that sort of calmness that Bethel exuded in the last couple of days, even when he was playing well.
So the next thing on this doc is interview with Billy. Charlie, do you want to explain?
Yeah, so I have a friend called Billy who has actually been out there for these last 3 tests. Pray for him. But it's part of, like, you know, I don't feel too bad for him because
he got to go to Australia.
He's in sunny Australia. Yeah. He's been to probably 3 of the best cricket stadiums in the world. He's seen an England win, which is pretty improbable. And he's also been to East Asia before, and then he's going to New Zealand, and he's going to India. So no sympathy for him. But yeah, we had a catch up with him about how his experience out there has been. So Billy, you've been at the last 3 tests, is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, started off in Adelaide, had a brief bit of relief in Melbourne, and then another miserable 5 days in Sydney.
And what's your verdict overall on the cricket you've seen?
Well, the way I look at it is, before I came out, I asked for 1 test match victory and a Joe Root turn, and I got what I wanted, but I'm still not happy.
Successful series, though.
Yeah, I got what I wanted, but I'm still not happy because I reckon we had chances to win 4 out of the 5 test matches and just bottled it. And I think it's a terrible Australian team as well.
Yeah.
Especially considering no Cummins, no Hazelwood, no Lyon for most of it. You're never going to get a better chance to win in Australia. Weatherald is a very, very average opener at best. Travis Head's not an opener. And yet they both outscored outscored and out-averaged both our openers, I would imagine, which is just a disgrace. Some of the things I've seen, I'm not going to mention any names, Will Jacks, James Smith, were things that if I did them in Sunday League cricket, I would get a bollocking for doing it. Never mind doing it on the biggest stage of all.
One thing I wanted to ask, one thing that's like really, I don't know, the TNT, as we've discussed in this episode, the TNT coverage has been shit. And you haven't really been able to get a full grasp of what's actually been going on out there. But one thing that's like been very clear from the Barmy Army is that there's been points when Jamie Smith or whoever has hit a 6 and there's been a massive cheer, and then he's blocked the next ball and the cheer's been even bigger. It seems like there's a real appetite for some sensible test match batting. So what have you gathered is the Barmy Army's current view on Bazball out there?
I think Bazball's dead, or at least in its current form. Yeah, the biggest cheer I heard, the two biggest cheers I heard in the 3 matches I went to were when Ben Duckett left the ball and when Cam Green dropped a catch. I think it was on day 4 at Sydney, their first drop of the series. That was the biggest cheer I heard from the Barmy Army all in the 12 days that I was there. No, I think Bazball has to die.
And have you spoken to other people that think the same?
I've spoken to, there's a lot of old boys out there who were, even from the start, were absolutely livid about it. But I think even the truest believers, which I would have described myself as one of prior to this series, I think now I've seen against the elite teams, especially away from home, it is not all they have to do is put a few men out on the boundary. If you've not got any cricket IQ, as Harry Brook, Jamie Smith, players like that do, all they have to do is put a few players out on the boundary and Bazball's dead instantly. Watching Marnus Labuschagne get Jamie Smith out was a travesty. Watching his smug little face running around the ground.
Yeah, have you seen Agnew talking about it?
No, what did he say?
He literally just went, no. No.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we were saying. I was sat there in genuine disbelief. Like, that was the first time in my life I've actually considered standing up and shouting some abuse at one of my own players, because watching that was sickening. And then his run out in the second inning. I think I could watch every single England Test match live for the rest of my life, and I'll never see a player get out as badly twice in the same match as I did there. It was, just embarrassing. And of course, all the Aussies around us were just piling on the misery.
Well, yeah, that was going to be my next question. What's the treatment from the Aussies been like?
As in, they're all very friendly. At Melbourne, actually, we saw a few punch-ups. Like, it was like, I'd say Melbourne was more like a football crowd than a cricket crowd. There was a really good atmosphere, really rowdy, but there were some people overstepping the line there. In Adelaide and Sydney, we've talked to a lot of Aussie boys who've just been almost just sympathetic, I would say. Like, they just feel sorry for us. They're like, "What? You come all the way around the world to watch this, mate?" Like, it's like, yeah, they've all been very friendly. Yeah, there's been a lot of, "Where's your baseball now, lads?" Every time we block a ball, every time we leave a ball. But no, overall they've been really friendly and, like, I'd say more than anything, just purely sympathetic. Like, they'll admit that they're a poor side right now, and they were all expecting a closer series, but unfortunately we couldn't do it.
Yeah, you almost sense like disappointment from them.
Yeah, some of them were. Yeah, some of them said they wanted us to win in Adelaide. When we were at Adelaide, someone said, "We want you to win just to keep it exciting. We're bored of it being 3-0 after 3." Yeah, exactly. Oh, that was the worst. That was really rubbing it in. Just yeah. I'm actually rooting for England here. Like, yeah, if like a DRS went our way, some of the Aussies were cheering, and that's when you know you must be a terrible, terrible cricket side.
I wanted to ask, what was it like entering in the third test, already 2-0 down? I don't have too much sympathy for you, because there was like a big BBC piece back here, like doing a profile on all the England fans who'd travelled over just for Melbourne and Sydney, and it's like, "I've spent my life savings to be here." And it's like, well, if you'd have just bothered to check the last 9 of the last 10 series down under, you probably could have guessed what would have happened at this point. But obviously this time it was a bit different. We were hoping for something closer. So what was it like entering from the third test onwards, being 2-0 down?
Well, we still actually had hope. Like, we could have won in Perth. Well, we should have won in Perth. We could have won in Brisbane. Going into Adelaide, we still had that little flicker of dream. Like, we've been 2-0 down in series before and come back. But at the same time, we also just looked at it like we're in a beautiful country, missing the dark days in England. Adelaide Oval was probably the most beautiful sports ground I've ever been to. A beautiful city as well. And there were some depressing points. Day 2, I think it was, watching another England batting collapse, watching Ollie Pope. As soon as, I can't remember whether it was Crawley or Duckett who got out, but we saw him telling Lyon to get loose as soon as the wicket fell, and it was inevitable what was coming next. I think he lasted 2 balls against Nathan Lyon, and there were some low points. There were a lot of swear words used towards Ollie Pope that day between me and Tom on our walk home. Not fit to wear the shirt, etc. But no, it was also sort of, it felt a bit sentimental being at the Bazball funeral as well, I'd say. I mean, that was the day, day 5 there was the day everyone accepted you can't play like this anymore. And then we went to Melbourne and played slightly more sensible cricket. Obviously got quite lucky with the pitch. And to be fair, just seeing that made the whole trip worth it, I would say. Like I said, I asked for 1 win and 1 Joe Root turn, and I got that. So
we've been very England focused this series, so probably should talk about the 1 win, even though it means nothing. What was it like? Obviously a crazy 2-day game, but yeah, what was the viewing experience like for that?
Oh, the atmosphere was incredible. As in, like I said, I've never seen anything like that other than at the biggest football matches. It felt like a football crowd. It wasn't all your old boys just sat there clapping. I'd say it was 50-50 English Australian. Although to be fair, we were sat in with the Barmy. We got tickets in with the Barmy Army for Melbourne, which made a big difference to our experience. I feel it was extremely rowdy. A lot of beer flowing all around the ground. And people will say it wasn't good for Test cricket, but I thought it was the most exciting, day 2 especially, the most exciting day of sport I've ever watched live.
Yeah. I think 1 or 2 of them is fine, but just not all of them. So yeah, Duckett's, I saw his rant. I was watching Firebug actually.
Duckett's innings and day 2 there was genuinely the most erratic thing I've ever seen. Every single ball he was either going to get out or hit 4, and it wasn't traditional, but it was pure entertainment. So yeah, now Melbourne was great. So I'd say it was probably the worst of the 3 stadiums I've been to.
Really? Or the SCG and the Adelaide Oval do look beautiful, to be fair.
It was pretty ugly. It was like a concrete jungle, really. But obviously huge. And being in there with 100k people, you're probably not going to do that too often watching the cricket. So yeah, just a lot of good experiences, really.
And what's the nightlife like in the cities you've been to? Have you bumped into any England players?
We've not, funny enough, actually, which I was expecting to, considering some of the stories. I assume you've seen the Harry Brook news that broke in the last 24 hours. And then he went out and scored a century the next day after getting lamped by a bouncer. But no, yeah, we haven't bumped into any England players. A lad we were with here in Sydney for a few of the days actually bumped into Bashir on a morning run and told him that he should be playing. So I don't think Bashir's been boozing. I think he's been working hard.
No,
I feel sorry for him, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. I heard that in one of the coaches put on like a optional morning run in Noosa, and him and Josh Tongue were the only people who showed up.
Yeah, I saw that as well, yeah. But I generally think if Bashir had played here in Sydney, we'd have had a much better chance. Well, anyone would have been better than Potts. That Potts bowling display was, again, if I'd bowled like that in Sunday League cricket, they would have taken me out of the attack after an over or two. What does Travis Head love? He loves it short and wide. So what does Potts do? He bowls short and wide at 75 miles per hour, and the rest is inevitable.
I've been crying out for him as well, to be fair. So it's nice to get confirmation that I was wrong.
So was I, but what I saw, I don't know whether it's because he's not bowled in so long or what, but that was the worst bowling display I've ever seen in any professional cricket game, I would say. I don't know what he ended up on. Was about not 0 for 150 or something?
Something probably. Like that, yeah. Did he take one in the second innings?
They didn't let him bowl.
Oh.
That just shows how bad he was. They were bowling Root. They were bowling Joe Root before they let their number 10 have another bowl. And
Christ.
Yeah.
That is proper Sunday League.
Stokes has to take some serious responsibility here, I feel. So I thought some of the tactics were just laughable. Short, like I said, bowling short to Travis Head over and over again. I vowed that I'm never going to grow a moustache ever again in my life because I'm sick of the sight of Travis Head's moustache. Lifting that helmet up too many times. And yeah, no, it's all been, there's been a lot of advertisement taking the piss out of the English. Every airport we fly into, there's something about the Poms being 3-0 down or 4-1 down or whatever. But no, it's been a good experience still, and I'm sure I'll definitely be back here at some point to watch it again.
That was going to be one of my questions, so it's nice to hear that it's not ruined you. Hopefully I'll be there with you one of the times. But I wanted to ask, well, one extra question based on what you just said, actually. Have you really felt, it's the cliche is that the whole of Australia is kind of against you when you're there. So if you're saying with advertising and stuff, have you really felt that being there?
Like I said, mate, it's been more sympathy. It's been more just them just laughing at us and with a bit of sympathy. Like, yeah, we were expecting you to actually compete this time. This is our work. What Stuart Broad said was half correct, mate. This was their worst team since 2010, 2011. Was it our best team? Probably not, after what I've seen over the last few weeks. But no, they've been... I wouldn't say they felt against us. Like you hardly heard a peep out of Australian fans at the ground. They don't really have an atmosphere like you do in England, I'd say. It was all the Barmy Army, really. There was one day where they had, I don't know if you saw the Richie Bennos. They were pretty loud, to be fair to them. But apart from that, it was all very exhibition match sort of thing. Like they all knew what was happening. They all knew they were going to win anyway. So it just seemed normal to them. And yeah, no, I wouldn't say it was hostile at all, apart from maybe a day or two at Melbourne where some thugs came looking for trouble. That it got a little bit hostile then. But yeah, apart from that, been very friendly and very, I'll just say sterile almost. Like it was literally just them waiting for what they knew was going to happen, which I think rubs salt into the wounds more because, yeah, like I said, there's just no competition.
All right, I've got one more question for you. I really enjoyed your England flight list that you sent me about who was going home in business class and economy and the luggage hold. So do you want to just run us through some of your placements?
So first class, I don't even know if Jofra Archer makes it anymore now that I think, seeing as his body fell apart again. But yeah, Joe Root, he can sit where he likes. Jacob Ethel, we might even upgrade to pilot. He can fly the plane home with an elf bar in hand. And Josh Tong as well, I thought bowled brilliantly. Josh Tong is my main hope for this bowling attack now, going forward. The only one who was consistently on line and length. I know he only played 3, but stayed fit for all of them, which the others don't seem to be able to do. Shaweeb made it into business class, obviously, just out of sympathy. Didn't really do anything. Probably one of the only players who came away without damaging their legacy from this tour. I think Harry Brook might actually have been in there, but he's been relegated again to economy. The Kennels, Potts, as in he only had one chance, but he just didn't take it. But not quite bad enough to go in the luggage hold because I do feel a bit sorry for him. They bowled him on the pitch, which probably suited him least when the series was already dead, and he's been carrying a lot of drinks. And we put Mark Wood in there, another Durham lad, just to keep him company. Don't want getting lonely. The luggage hold, I think it's generous on some of them. Yeah, it's very Surrey heavy. And Tom, who I've been travelling around with and watching these games with, is a huge Surrey fan. And even he's writing public apologies now for the contribution of his county men. So yeah, Jamie Smith in the luggage hold, preferably at the back, somewhere where it's freezing. I want to see Thomas or James Rue. I don't want James Smith. It's not just been his stupid batting; it's been his keeping as well.
Yeah.
I think that's been one of the biggest differentials between the two teams. Is Carey undoubtedly the best keeper in the world right now against Smith, who looks like a part timer, and he is a part timer. He doesn't even keep for Surrey.
And the noise coming out now is that he doesn't even practice, apparently.
Yes, well, there you go. We don't have a fielding coach. We sacked our fielding coach, and we were surprised that we dropped 17 and they only dropped 1 all series. And that to me is the underlining thing of where Bazball has to change. The arrogance needs to stop. Brendan McCullum's in there.
Yeah.
Who else was in? Will Jacks got relegated after that shot the other day. Oh my God. That was right in front of us as well, the catch. And I just could not believe. My only thought is, has he been told by McCullum/Stokes to go out and just have a hit? But the way the game was sitting, you want to just bat long and bat till they can't win and then get a draw out of it at least. And yeah, he's in the hold. I've actually decided to make a new category called Swimming Home. And that belongs to Oliver Pope. I never want to see him in an English shirt again. The most predictable man in world cricket. Just as soon as line comes on, he looks like a deer in the headlights. Just absolutely pathetic. And number 1 swimming home spot, Rob Key. He has to go. He planned the Noosa trip. He covered up that Brooke had this punch up. Just the arrogance that he speaks with. What's your pedigree? What's your legacy, Rob Key? What did you do in international cricket? You won 200 against a pretty average side, and he's now dictating the way things go. Yeah.
You've missed out his nickname there.
Mr. Blobby. Yeah. Mr. Blobby Rob Key. It is time to go. I have missed out Duckett.
Duckett and Stokes. Was Stokes mentioned? Did I miss that?
I think Stokes probably goes down into the kennels just for the poor captaincy.
There's a lot of Durham lads in the kennels. Is this northern bias?
Yeah,
detecting?
It can be a Durham club in the kennels. No, he bowled very well and looked our most threatening bowler a lot of the series, but did nothing with the bat. And I thought the captaincy was poor. Some of the tactics we were using were pathetic. And Duckett's a funny one because he's had a terrible tour, but he is probably our best opener we've had in maybe even 10 years now. So I'd put him in the hold, but I don't want him dying on the flight back.
Yeah, he's got a lot of credit in the bank. Maybe he needs a taxi back to him via the nets.
Yeah, he can have a taxi and a ferry back. He can have a long, hard thought to think about the way he's batted this series, and then hopefully come good again soon. But yeah, just pretty disappointing all round. Yeah. It was great to see a Bethell's maiden turn. I think that'll be the first of many, and it was just a beautiful knock to watch. Like watching Root's one was good, but Bethell's knock was actually beautiful, and a lot of the Australians loved it as well. That's how you knew it was a good knock. A lot of the Australians were applauding him. So yeah, very good.
Well, Billy, thank you very much, and yeah, hopefully you'll be out there in 4 years' time.
I hope so. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, Billy.
Do you want a Guinness?
Yes. Great time for a Guinness. Oh. A surgeon.
I am a surgeon.
Oh, it's such a nice sound, isn't it? The glug, 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 glug. Oh, it's lovely, isn't it? Oh. I wonder if the Nitro Surge would work on a Brewdog Black Heart. So I introduced Ben to the Brewdog Black Heart, and I said, I think it's better than Guinness. And he was like, what? That's controversial. And I said, honestly, I think it has more prominent chocolate and coffee notes. And then he had a sip and he went, notes? That's a symphony.
Nice.
So I think Ben backs the...
Such a wordsmith.
He is. But I think he did then say, if I had 1 pint and I had got to choose which one, I'd have the Black Heart.
Yeah.
But I think if I was going to have 7... It would have to be the Guinness because it's just more sessionable. The Brewdog.
No offence to Ben, but when has he ever had 7 pints?
Yeah, that's a good point. Just shows our alcoholism, doesn't it? And issues. Cheers, Charlie.
Damage.
Part 2 of the pod.
I'm very happy to give you dome.
I'll be happy to receive it. So, on that note, let's talk about Usman Khawaja. I saw that he received a Guard of Honour from the England player. Oh, by the way, Billy, thanks for that interview. That was great.
Thanks, Billy.
That was a really good interview.
Hopefully it happened, otherwise this won't make any sense.
The power of editing. Usman Khawaja has retired. It was weird because he got brought back in, didn't he? It was supposed to sort of have already... He hadn't fully retired at that point, but he was out the side. Is that right? And then he got brought back in because of the selection crisis. And then he retired for good, for proper. And he was given a Guard of Honour. He had his last hurrah. And then also, Charlie, you mentioned the reprimand. I'm looking forward to finding out about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, it's not been a vintage final series for Khawaja, which is the case with many retiring players. I think as old as he is, maybe he would have continued on past the series had he not felt like the Wolves were closing in on him in the way that they eventually have. Yeah. And I don't think Australia would have persisted with him at 5 when he'd been opening, because it makes more sense to, just put someone else in at 5 now that gap's been created by Travis Head moving up. But I think obviously for you tuning in as this your first proper Ashes, you won't have like as much of an understanding about how great and important of a player Khawaja has been. He's always been in and out of the side until these last sort of few years of his career. He's always seemed to be the man to make way. But even like when he was recalled, he averaged around 40, which, England are crying out for a couple of more batters to average 40. And he's always been a very incredibly classy, languid left-hander with the long sleeves, like just proper left-hander. And he actually was recalled when Travis Head got COVID in the last Ashes Down Under, and he made twin tons in Sydney to sort of demand to keep his place. But the problem was the place that he had at number 5 was Travis Head's. So what they did, because Australia are a lot more like fluid about batting lineups, and I think it's a sensible way to be, is that they were like, well, actually Marcus Harris is the guy who is not doing very well and he's opening, so Khawaja do you feel ready to open? And he said yes, because he hadn't been an opener, but he just felt comfortable enough with his game at that age to take it on. And what followed was an absolutely incredible late career run of form. He got hundreds in India, Pakistan. Probably his magnum opus was the last Ashes in England, where he finished as the top run scorer. Only 100 in the first game, but that was sort of a weird series where no one made 200s. So he was still the best batter. And he's always been very outspoken as a Muslim player playing for Australia. It's of Pakistani origin. He's always fought the good fight, which I like. One time, which we'll get out of the way, which he fought the bad fight, which I think turned a lot of England fans off him. This isn't the reprimand thing, but he basically in the last Ashes series, there was a big hoo-ha about overrates, as there kind of has been this series, but I think it's fallen a bit more by the wayside this series, I think, because it's been so seam heavy.
Is it Australia just going really slowly? Is that what?
And England.
Okay.
But with Australia, there's the feeling that it's a deliberate tactic, because the way they set their team up, traditionally they just they have Lyon and then they rotate the three main seamers who are all quite old, and so they sort of purposefully bowl their overs quite slow, just have more rest, but then obviously you're sort of robbing punters of overs is how the argument goes. Right. Which maybe we'll get into a bit more in our, just talking about the general product this series has been. But last time, it's always Mum that's texting me on these. I mean, it's nice. It's nice that she cares.
Yeah, that is nice,
let me sip.
Have a little sip.
But yeah, overrates was a massive deal in the last series, and partly because obviously with England you have a bit more rain about, so it really matters. It might affect the result if you don't get those overs in, and also the games are a lot closer, so it seemed like it was actually important.
Yeah.
But basically both teams were offenders for it, but basically because England were batting in the Baswell way, and they were, even when they were reaching parity with Australia, they were doing so in 80 overs or under within the lifespan of the first new ball. Usman Khawaja basically successfully lobbied the ICC to mean that overrate penalties only applied to innings which were more than 80 overs in length, which meant that England got docked. So if you play Basball... Yeah. So England got docked loads of points for slow overrates in the World Test Championship, but Australia didn't get docked as many points because they were bowling England out in under 80 overs consistently, despite England making decent totals.
That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah. So yeah, but it's, probably the most unfair example you could use of Usman Khawaja being someone who is willing to use his voice to try and enact change. And he's been very vocal about the struggles he's gone through. He actually did a very explosive sort of retiring press conference, or a very raw retiring press conference, where he said, I do feel like that I've been treated differently because I didn't fully assimilate with the players, even though I tried. I'd go to nightclubs even though I didn't drink.
It must be tough. I mean, it's such, as you said, you mentioned the English, the British culture of Australia's the exact same. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm guessing that, because in this country you play cricket. There's always a clubhouse. There's always a bar. It's massive.
Yeah, we've had scandals ourselves with the Azim Rafiq, all stuff like that, and a big focus on that was drinking culture and how that it prohibits Muslim players from fully assimilating. So he said that, and he said as a result, he feels like he was always the most vulnerable player in the team, and you have seen that he's been dropped quite a few times despite having a decent record. So you could say there's truth in that, and also he's spoken out against the same thing we talked about Jofra Archer with, about this stereotype of him being lazy compared to other players, and he said, all the hoo-ha that was made about me playing golf and then getting injured, he was like, the amount of times that's happened to other players. Glenn Maxwell fell out of golf buggy and broke his leg, and he didn't receive as much criticism as Khawaja has. And Khawaja's basically saying, I think race probably has something to do with that. And also the sanctions thing that I mentioned was he a year or two ago wore a black armband for the victims of within Gaza and Palestine, and he got fined for it. But I think increasingly we live in a world where athletes are unwilling to speak up for social change in the way that they maybe previously did. I can understand why, with the amount of like PR and agents and money in the game.
And also, I feel like sporting penalties.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can understand why, but hats off to him for being brave enough to say what he thinks in spite of this, and also just hats off to him for being a very lovely to watch, very gritty, and ultimately very successful test match player.
Yeah, fair. But well, as I'm new to this, I don't know much about you, Usman Khawaja, as you're definitely listening to this. But you sound like my kind of guy, and well done and congratulations on your career. Look at us being nice. We're being nice about Australian players, English players. We're not being very nice about a lot of English players. So, that we are very. We're being as neutral as we possibly can, as we now move on to something that is not particularly neutral. It's an opinion-based subject. Our players of the series, and also wooden spoon as well. So we'll see if we
Can't forget the wooden spoon.
No, exactly. We'll see if we differ or we're the same. How do you want to do this? Do you want to do like a countdown, like a 3, 2, 1, and then we say our player of the?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do that. Okay.
Right. Our player of the series is
3, 2, 1. Travis Head. Okay.
Yes. Who wants to go?
You go, Charlie, because you know what you're talking about. I like his moustache, and he played quite well, didn't he? There you go. That's what I think.
Okay, so the first thing I want to say about this is it is harsh on Mitch Starc. I know it may appear that his returns have diminished a little bit as the series has gone on, but I think that's just completely understandable from a fast bowling perspective. I think it's not like batting where when you're in form you can just keep churning out runs, and you see with wicket-keeper batters, we saw it twice this summer with Smith and Pant, that it's so physically demanding to keep wicket and to bat that you naturally see like diminishing returns with your batting, and then you just amplify that by 100 if you're a fast bowler. For Mitch Starc to even play all 5 tests at his age and to consistently hit 90 miles an hour and to bowl as well as he had and bat really well as well, averaged 30 with the bat I think over the series, which is more than a lot of top order batters, and 31 wickets as well is really impressive. And I also think that the reason why his wickets tally started to decrease a little bit was that the others just started to step up around him, whether it was Lyons and Cummins returning or whether it was Neser and Boland stepping up. It just meant that he had less wickets to take. And I honestly have no doubt in my mind that had we got to the point where the Ashes were on the line in the 4th and 5th tests and his team were playing shit and Mitch Starc needed to take all the wickets, then he would have taken all the wickets because he's a champion. But I think ultimately, a word for Alex Carey as well. Fantastic wicket keeping, very consistent batting, proper firefighter and a proper counter-attacker in the way that, showing that you can counter-attack while also being solid and putting a price on your wicket. But I would still say that Travis Head deserves it. I think 300s in the series is immense, and they're all, I think, clutch. Yeah, they're all clutch. Maybe the second one, Australia were already fairly in a dominant position and England sort of gifted it to him. But he still goes big. That's the thing with Travis Head. He never scores 200. He never has. But he so consistently can get 150 plus.
That's interesting.
If he scores 100.
Why do you think that is?
I think he just puts his foot down after a while, and he's not, too milestone orientated to think that he needs to score 200. And often his innings are impactful anyway because they're quick. But yeah, I think he's just been brilliant. And if he'd have scored 300s from number 5, he would have been a good bet for this award. But to stick your hand up to open, part way through a series, and then to churn up 300s.
Yeah, in what's not supposed to be your natural position.
And in the place where we there's a phenomenon these days which we've discussed about how you put your best batter or your most sort of impactful batter at number 5 to protect them from the new ball, like a Richard Pant, Harry Brook, and Travis Head, even if that means putting in a false 3, like someone basically to just a sacrificial lamb at 3 almost. Yeah. So to step up to the hardest position in batting and then to just smash 300s is incredible. And yeah, he's done it with a smile on his face. He's done it with the absolute adoration of the Australian public. I also think he's a huge success story in the way that an attacking mindset can completely revolutionise a player's career, as was the hope that Bazball would do. And it's not that it's not done it entirely, but Travis Head was someone with a pretty middling record up until the last Ashes Down Under, when he changed his mindset and said, actually, I'm just going to attack, or I'm going to think attacking, is what he did. And there's a really fascinating interviews he's done where he says, I go into every ball wanting to attack it, and as soon as I started to do that, my forward defence improved. It's
Interesting.
just a weird, like,
is that because is it maybe because if you're going into it with an attacking mindset, I suppose the forward defence becomes a little bit more reactive?
Yeah, or a bit more, or at least a bit more full-blooded, a bit more committed.
Yeah.
And Rob Key, who's now the managing director of England, when he was a commentator, was a big proponent of saying, you can do everything aggressively, you can leave with an aggressive mindset, which you could say is jargon, but I think Travis Head has sort of proven that mindset has merit. But then you have to ask, what is he doing that England aren't doing? If he's got that mindset, but he's still, he's performing consistently and he has genuinely improved. And I think the main thing that you can point to is that even when he came to England for the last Ashes, he was a player who was, England were scared of him. He scored 100 in the World Test Championship final just before the Ashes against India, and all the chat was, how are we going to stop this guy? And as much he was feared, and as much as it was thought that he was going to be able to dominate your Broads and your Andersons, because that's his, the bowling that he really is to face, there were huge question marks against him against spin and bouncers. And I think there was a little bit of a lag to maybe even up to this series, people were of the opinion that those two methods were a good way to go against him, and they're just not anymore. He's dominant against the short ball now, and he's very competent against spin. So I think that shows that the difference between him and the Bazball players is that although he's going into it with his attacking mindset, that has also come clearly with an extreme amount of work behind the scenes about how do I improve in these key areas. I'm not just going to say, well, I'll go harder against the spin because I'm struggling against spin. He's clearly made a lot of technical improvements that he's paired with this sort of mantra, this mindset that he has, and it's paid dividends. Yeah,
it's mentality again. It feels like going away and again. I don't know if there is too much of a link here, but what I was thinking of when you were saying that is it's interesting that I know it's a more philosophical thing generally with England Bazball to combat limitations by just kind of swinging and going attacking, but it sounds like Travis Head has combated limitations by working on limitations, which is maybe what you should do.
Yeah, exactly. And he's also smart enough to realise that if you can be as good as you want against certain types of bowling, but if you have very obvious weaknesses, then that is what you're going to be facing on a day-to-day basis. So he thought, if England were proactive in the last Ashes of trying to bounce him as soon as he came in, which was the smart decision. But he was also then smart enough to be like, well, if people are going to do that, then I'm going to figure out how to combat it. And Harry Brook's got similar. And Jamie Smith have got similar things that they need to figure out. It's like Harry Brook needs to decide, what is my game plan when people bowl sixth stump line to me consistently? Jamie Smith's got to say, what is my game plan when people bowl bounces to me? Because if he's getting out even to Marnus Labuschagne with bouncers, that's clearly a weakness.
I mean, we haven't actually touched on that yet, have we? Because I remember watching the Test Match special BBC commentary, and he just goes, "Oh no,
he just goes, no.
Oh no."
I don't know why you're pretending Jonathan Agnew is from Yorkshire. I think you're getting him mixed up with Geoffrey Boycott.
I think I am. Yeah, I think I am.
He's a Leicestershire lad. Well, he played for Leicestershire anyway.
You might be in a better position to do the impression then.
No. He's got just normal harsh voice.
And he called it, didn't he, as well? He called it.
Well, he didn't actually call it. He said,
if this happens, then
it's awful. Yeah.
And then it happened next ball.
It's just a real brainlessness and an arrogance from England generally to fall into these traps time and time again. And I said to you off air, it's because I think that, they can't put their egos aside. They know that, Jamie Smith is a better Test match batter than Marnus Labuschagne is a bowler. But maybe he just doesn't have to show that.
I think that's what it was. It was, I'm going to prove that I'm better than you. Watch this. Oh shit, I'm out. You know.
And Will Jacks did a very similar thing to Bo Webster. He was out second ball, out in the deep at a really crucial juncture of the match where if someone had stuck around with Bethel, then they could have got to a defendable target, because the pitch, which we'll talk about in a bit, was starting to play tricks. And yeah, it's just extremely frustrating for this to happen over and over again. Just no match awareness. That was Jacks being promoted, by the way, to 6 in Stokes' absence. And he does that second ball.
Not what you want, is it? Well, speaking of sort of lows then, should we do our wooden spoon as
yes,
well?
Good catch, because I forgot that's what we were talking about. Went on like 3 separate tangents.
Which I enjoy. I enjoy the tangents. Tangents are good. I'm intrigued to this one. I think the player of the series was, in my head, it was between two. It was between Mitch Starc and Travis Head. And I think if we'd have said it at the point at which Australia had won the Ashes 3-0, I probably would have said Mitch Starc at that point. But I think Travis Head now has come through on that. Wooden spoon's going to be interesting. So I let's just say it, and then we'll go.
3-2 on it?
Let's 3-2
this time.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Ben Duckett. Oh, okay. So I thought maybe there might be a shout for Ollie Pope, but for me it was about expectations. And
absolutely.
Well, I was going to say that with Ben Duckett opening, you expect, you want him to perform. You want to see a lot more than what we saw. And I think with Ollie Pope, there was already talk about whether he was going to be dropped, like, going into it. And I think it'd be actually pretty harsh on him to say he was the worst player of the series when he had a target on his back from day dot. And actually, in the very first test, he started off quite well. He actually, there was like, oh well, Ollie Pope's done all right. So at no point I think Pope and Crawley had one good partnership, but other than that, were very disappointing. And I think you expect more from Duckett than you expect from Pope in this series. So that's why I said Ben Duckett.
And Ollie Pope's ended up with a bigger high score in the series than Ben Duckett, 46 compared to 42. And I think what's especially disappointing about Ben Duckett is as well as what you've just said, is the amount of starts he got. And, we discussed there was a really interesting Wisden reel that Ben Gardiner did, talking about how much of a statistical anomaly his series has been, where he's got, he's actually averaging 18 despite not getting over 50, which is pretty amazing. And I know that we talked about this and how many starts he'd had, and you'd said, well, the comments were basically saying, isn't that just like a convoluted way of saying he's been shit? Well, actually, no, because like what a usual poor test series looks like is a lot of single figure scores. And the fact that Ben Duckett was consistently able to get into double figures, despite all the concerns that we had about his technique and how it would suit Australia.
So at that point, he should be settling down. He should be making higher totals.
It's more frustrating because it's like, well, you're in there, you should get your eye in. Yeah. And again, same with Harry Brook, but Harry Brook did manage a few more like significant scores. But it's like, there's some sympathy in getting out for a duck to the new ball. But it's like, if you're seeing off the first 3 overs of Mitchell Starc and then just playing a really bad shot, then that's more frustrating, because the onus, ex-players always talk on commentary all the time about how the onus is on the player who is in to score the runs. Yeah. You can't leave it to other people. Obviously, Ben Duckett never got to that point, but it's just, incredibly frustrating for him to have these starts. He also had like quite a lot of balls that he made look really good. I think if you look back, you'd be like, well, actually, that was a good one from Starc. That was a good one from Lyon. But it was actually it was these ones where like his defence was poor in a way that made the balls. No, they were good balls, but they're balls that a Test match opener should be able to defend if he was comfortable with his defence. Which, as
Travis Head.
Yeah, exactly. He's an incredibly attacking player. Duckett and Head. If you had to say who's the most similar player to Travis Head in terms of profile in the world right now, you'd say Ben Duckett in terms of left-handed, all-format opener, incredibly attacking. But Travis Head just clearly, despite having this attacking mindset, has a very solid defence, or has grown a very solid defence. Whereas Ben Duckett has gone about it in a way where he's like, well, I'll just attack all the time so I don't have to defend. And then when the shit's got a bit real in an Ashes series, and in the back end of that India series, he struggled. I think it's also worth saying that him and Jamie Smith have both really clearly suffered from England trying to make them into the all-format opening partnership, with the exception to Tess. This summer, they were opening the batting together in T20s and ODIs, and they played the 100. And then they were both culminated in them both being released for the South Africa white ball games at the end of the summer, because they were both just clearly spent, and both had really suffered towards the end of the India series and into the 100 ducket especially. And then both had really poor series in New Zealand, and then both have had really poor Ashes. So as much as England are trying to turn those three squads back into one squad as much as they can, it's clearly having effects on the batters, which needs addressing. And also, I think the final point we need to make about Ben Duckett is Noosa.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. That reel is, well, we've discussed it, haven't we? We discussed the where he gets kind of caught out by a fan, and they make the get back in the net. I'll drive you to the nets joke. But I think it just goes back to it's not a good look. If that was Travis Head, you'd probably go in, what's he like, cheeky boy? At least he's scoring 150 every fucking innings.
Yeah, but that's the thing. If there was a video of Travis Head with an Australian fan at 4 a.m, they'd be carrying him on their backs.
Yeah, worshipping. Yeah.
And maybe that just speaks a little bit to us as English people. Also, it wasn't going well, and I think I bring up Noosa because I think, there was a video of Bethel, but then, he's backed it up.
Yeah, he's done something.
100.
He's done something.
And, there was the Brooks stuff that's come out now, but, he had all things considered, if you factor in New Zealand and that great 100 he made there, his returns have been okay. Yeah. I think for Ben Duckett to have an awful series on and off the field, he had to be the recipient of our wooden spoon.
Who ran him the closest for you? Did you? Where did you feel? So with Ollie Pope, was it?
Pope's up there, I think. Yeah. Obviously, he only played 3 games, but he was dropped, so that's significant. Cam Green is up there. Like he's had a shocker. I think I will talk about what Australia will do with their team going forward, but I do think there are question marks around Cam Green. It's been a long project and just not really showing returns yet. And I think if you'd have told him, I was laughing to myself earlier because they were showing his stats on the telly, and if you'd have told him at the start of the series that he was going to average 60 and 18, then you'd just snapped your hand off. But he's averaged 60 with the ball and 18 with the bat. So that's not great. I think it's harsh on Bryden Cast because he played all 5 tests and he ends up England's top wicket taker. But I think he's been so expensive and so wayward so often. I don't think he's in wooden spoon category because ultimately, you can't fault the commitment and the wickets. As much as they didn't win England the games or come quick enough or come cheaply enough, he took them. And, he's clearly a lion-hearted character who will be in England's plans in the future. Jamie Smith's up there as well. I think it almost became, I was defending Jamie Smith a lot towards the start of the series, but it almost became more frustrating towards the end of the series when he was actually getting himself in and then getting out in incredibly brainless ways. Adelaide, when he got his 60 and he'd hit 4 4s in a row, and it's just just have the awareness to not try and hit Stark across the line the next ball, just consolidate. And then he got run out stupidly in this test and bounced out, so he's definitely up there. Mostly England players, really.
Well, I was going to say it's worth noting as we move into Charlie's team of the series that exclusively Australia players are in the shout for player of the series, and almost exclusively England players are in for wooden spoon of the series. And that is almost a kind of asterisk or precursor, you could say, to the discussion we're now going to have on Team of the Series, because I read the BBC Sport readers' Team of the Series when we discussed that you were going to do this, just to see what they had gone with, and I was quite taken aback by what I saw. I won't give it away, but then, as it turned out, Charlie, you weren't too far away.
So I would have contributed to this poll because I did it. It was like they did it before the series ended, and I picked exactly the same team as ended up. So we won't spend too long on this because it's nothing excited. But I think it's just emblematic of the fact that actually not very many players on either side had like outstanding series. And it just so happens that the positions where England players did okay are the positions where Australia players didn't do great. So you've got Travis Head in there, of course. Then Zach Crawley is, the best of a bad bunch when it comes to him, Weatherald and Duckett. And then I initially didn't, same as the BBC readers, I didn't have a number 3 because I thought neither Pope or Labuschagne had done enough to merit inclusion, and you wanted both Smith and Root in there, which then paved the way for Harry Brook, even though he's had a very strange series, averaged just under 40 in the end. Excuse me.
I thought you were doing some sort of like gesture for Harry Brook then. He's averaged just under 40.
No, so he was initially in there, but I think now Bethel, he's had just 2 tests in the series and he's made a crucial 40 in of England win, which to be fair, Harry Brook also did, but Bethel did it, in the chase. And then this, beautiful 100. So I've now got him in at 3, and then Smith can keep his position because he won. And then so Root will bat at 5, and then you've got to have the next 2 positions are the one where they're by far the least debate about, I think, which is that Ben Stokes undoubtedly had a better series as the all-rounder than Cam Green did. Alex Carey and Jamie Smith, you couldn't have a more stark difference in how series went. So Stokes is in at 6, Carey in at 7, Stark in at 8. And then the other bowlers, Scott Boland absolutely deserves his spot, as does Jofra Archer. And then the last spot would just be between Nisa and Tong, who both ended up playing, I think they both played 3 tests in the end, and they both ended up with a similar amount of wickets at a similar average. You can call it England bias, and it probably is, but I've gone with Tong. I think just the fact that he was by far the best player for England in the games he played just gave him the nod over Nisa, but Nisa's also been very good with the bat. But yeah, that would be my team. Do you want to do a player of the series for England? Do you have a name?
I'm thinking Joe Root, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Joe Root because all of that pressure coming into it to get the 100 ended up with 2, and they both came in competitive situations where he was picking the team up and dragging them to a total that they would not have got if not for him. So it's pick the best out of a bad bunch, really. But I think I would go for Joe Root. Okay,
it's good that we said this then because we finally found something where we have a slight
disagreement. Okay.
I think, I'm very happy for Joe Root that he's got these 200s, but I think on a personal level, he won't be happy with how the series has gone. To not pass 50 in any other innings is very unlike him. He's always been an extremely consistent run scorer, even before he was this, 100 machine that he is now. And I think this series is a reflection of that 100 machine he is now, is that he's managed to churn out 2, even though he's not been his usual self. But I think, it's unfair to him to ask him to do everything for England, but he would have expected more of himself in between those innings. Yeah. And those technical issues that he's always had against the Australian right-arm quicks, and you've just added Boland to that now on top of Hazelwood and Cummins. I think he will be incredibly frustrated that he hasn't been able to tinker that one away. So I would go with Josh Tong personally. Okay. I think he's been the standout player ever since he came into the team. I think his ability to get top order players and the tail out is absolutely crucial, and I think he will, along with Jacob Bethel, be given the keys to this England team in the near future. So yeah, I would go for him. And I just really like him. I get it was probably one of those. I think you asked me recently who were the ones where you've said early on that you've pinned your star to their mast, and I said Marco Jansen for South Africa. I watched his debut test, and I couldn't think of any more. But in fairness, Josh Tong, his second test, is he bowled? It was a loss, and Australia were 120 for 130 for 2 or something. But both of those wickets were absolutely beautiful, bold deliveries from Josh Tong to get rid of Khawaja and Warner. And ever since then, I've been a massive admirer of his, even through his insanely wayward spells in the summer just gone, even though he ended up as the top wicket taker for England. So yeah, I would say he's the player of the series, and I'm very happy for him and excited for his future.
Nice. And I'm glad, as you say, we had a slight disagreement there, because I wasn't 100% sure we would both go for Ben Duckett. And I should say that we didn't confer beforehand. That was all very done behind closed doors and done for the benefit of the listeners, with the intrigue. I feel like this next question can be answered with one word, but we'll talk about it anyway. Has it been a good series? Do we do a 3, 2, 1 on that one as well?
Yeah, 3, 2, 1, no.
Moving on. No, go on, Charlie. Why has it not been a great series?
It's just, I think everyone feels disappointed, including probably a lot of Australians.
Yeah, well,
they love winning.
They love winning, but they did say coming into this series that it was almost like, let's hope it's a close one at least, And
it wasn't.
It wasn't, but also it wasn't even that entertaining.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of passages that were not compelling. That can come with games where one team's well ahead of the other, and that's fine. But I think on top of that, you had incredibly slow over rates. You had spin just playing absolutely no part, which kind of came to its conclusion or its peak here. We ended up with a pitch that actually you could have done with a spinner on, and we had Will Jacks, Jacob Bethel, Bo Webster, and Travis Head as our spin quartet. I just think it's been a fast scoring series, and I'm someone I've loved Bazball, and I've loved watching us bat, and I've also from time to time, if not enjoyed then appreciated watching opposition batters dismantle us, which has happened quite a lot, even when we've won. And it has been a fast scoring series, but I think from an England perspective, it's like, okay, well, they've scored at 5 and over a lot of the time, but then they've been losing wickets so regularly, and then they've hunkered down and gone too far the other way when it's too late, and actually you probably should have counter-attacked then. And then for Australia, it's like, yeah, they've scored quickly, but a lot of the time it's just been down to really poor bowling. It's like, okay, fair play. Travis Head is a very attacking player, and so is Alex Carey. And then Steve Smith's got the gears sometimes when he wants them. But to have Marnus Labuschagne score a few quick 540s in the series, he's clearly not in that good of nick. He hasn't been for years. And, he keeps getting out before 50, so he's clearly, not peak Marnus Labuschagne. But I think with the way he approaches batting, for him to score 40 or 40 just indicates that the bowling's shit, to be honest. It's not his game plan. So if that's what he's done, then England have just bowled so consistently in the wrong areas. So I think that's played a part. I think Snicko has just been a consistent joke.
Well, again, there was a situation in this one.
It was, but it's almost more annoying because the last, the final indignity was everyone getting angry about an Australia batter not being given out when he was clearly not out. It was a murmur.
Yeah.
It did not look like a spike at all, and it wasn't in line with the bat. I don't think it was out. At all. But it's where we've got to, there's so little faith in the technology that we have to kick up a fuss about everything, and also there's inconsistency because there has been other points. There's been points where they said that's a murmur. There's been points where things that look like a murmur have been given out, and then also that leads into my next point, which is the umpiring's been pretty shoddy. Some just pretty poor decisions, which obviously can be rectified these days with the video technology, but then also we've had the video technology failing. We've had them not getting a hold of proceedings on the pitch. If it's over rates, if it's, bad behaviour from the players, which they're not addressing. There was a really and then also I think one thing that always usually very striking to me about video umpires is that they have this script that is ingrained in them, and they always say the same things. There's been a lot of times this series where they've been rambling or unsure, and then I think the absolute final indignity, I think I've already said that, but this is the final indignity,
yeah.
There was a point last night when Bryden Carse, I believe, bowled to Travis Head. It sort of edged it, clearly hit the bat, ran away for 4. England with a half-hearted appeal, because it's like, was that toe of the end of the bat? Was that straight off the boot? If it was straight off the boot, then, maybe we should think about reviewing this. The way that it works is that the umpires are supposed to wait for the DRS timer to expire before they say whether it was runs or leg byes, because then that gives an indication of what the umpire thinks, whether it hit the leg or whether it hit the bat. But what the umpire did was give leg byes with about 5 seconds to go on the timer. So England were like, well, let's review it, because he thinks it's hit the leg. And then it turns out that it did hit the bat. So the umpire was wrong.
But that affects the game, isn't it?
But that affects both games. So what then happened was they awarded the runs to Travis Head because it had been leg byes, so it wasn't runs. Then they saw on review that it had hit his bat. So then you saw on the scorecard on the bottom it ticked from Travis Head 1 to Travis Head 5. So England burned to review to give Travis Head 4 more runs. And he ended up with 600 runs for the series.
Oh, wow.
So, but yeah, it's just, the umpiring has been, I genuinely think that cricket at the highest level is one of the, if not the best refereed sports. It's up there with rugby. Yeah. They are genuinely usually really good, and we've just not had that. There's also been two-day test matches, which is just a bit naff for a big series like this. And it's often led to, throughout any passage of play, the commentary has been, especially on the radio, the big traditionalists on TMS, where they've just been lamenting the death of the game they love before their eyes. And I don't agree with them, but I think, it has been skewed a little bit too far the other way. And I think the reason why you could always make a defence for Bazball is that it has created compelling cricket. But in this case, it absolutely has not.
So we've got the pitch as the next discussion point, Charlie. And I was just wondering whether this is the pitch for this final test.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well,
We're
there
not
we go.
Still talking about Melbourne.
I was going to say we've been there and done that.
But obviously, the hangover of Melbourne still exists, because there was so much chat on this pitch because of what happened in Melbourne, and that poor groundsman must have been under more pressure than any groundsman has ever been in the history of the sport. Yeah. And obviously that in itself is ridiculous, because the preparation for this pitch would have been months of work, and he can't suddenly turn around and make changes. And there's been suggestions that this was going to be a sort of Cricket Australia administrators pitch, meaning that they would, the bigwigs in the suits would rock up, and apparently saw a lot of them coming to inspect the pitch more than usual. They wanted this game to go 5 days, which it did. And they obviously wanted, above all else, just a long test. Yeah. And we got that. And I just want to say hats off to the Sydney Cricket Ground staff, because we got a 5-day test. We also just got a belting pitch that it was very ugly on the eye to start with, and I think had people worrying that it was going to be very lively. But it offered, which we've seen big hundreds from 4 players in this game. We've seen balls from the fast bowlers do all sorts. We've seen balls from the spinners do all sorts, even though they weren't proper spinners. So ultimately, it's created a great pitch. It was flat enough to begin with, and then became more lively as you went on, which is what you want. You want uneven bounce to creep into it on days 4 and 5, and that often, helps the team that have got their noses in front in the good conditions, as Australia did. But it's just, properly great test match pitch, and they must all be raising a glass to each other and wiping a huge amount of sweat off their brows.
Thank God, yeah. I was just chuckling to myself reading the next point, which is the final verdict on TNT's coverage, because it reminded me of a reel that I saw last night, which was, and I'm not sure if it was on TNT, but it was the lines that they use, and the dots and the lines to check out the bowler's action and where they're extending them. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But there was one wrist snap. But there was one where they were looking at a wicket keeper, and for some reason the technology drew lines and balls to his eyes, so he looked like a skeleton.
We have to know where his eyes is. That's important.
Yeah.
Where one of the crucial tenets of wicket keeping is having eyes.
Yeah, yeah. You don't get many eyeless or blind wicket keepers.
I actually...
No way. No, you're not going to say what
2 weeks ago, I interviewed a blind wicketkeeper.
Oh, wow.
Bashar Mohammed of the Birmingham Stars.
Shout out.
Absolutely lovely man. And a visually impaired cricketer.
So does that mean that if they were to draw his lines and eyes, what would they do with that?
Just nothing
there.
Nothing. But yeah, he's a great guy. Very inspiring. He started to lose his vision as in his 20s and continued to play red ball cricket.
Wow.
Just because he liked it so much.
Fair
even though
play.
he was going blind. And now he plays visually impaired cricket. But because he's got because he's actually played cricket growing up, whereas most of his teammates haven't, he's actually it sounds like he's a very, very good player still. And essentially he's in the way that visually impaired, this is the tangent of all tangents. The way that visually impaired cricket works is that you have different brackets depending on your level of sight. And he's basically actually a bracket above
where he
should be in terms of how much he can see, just because he's actually still such a good player, and he's the wicket keeper. And he recently scored an unbeaten 50 in their T20 Cup success. Had to retire out on 50 because that's how it works. So shout out Bashar Mohammed, inspiration. Where
TNT's
the hell were we?
TNT's coverage, Charlie, which we discussed a lot coming into this. Have you been won over?
No. No.
Very quick no.
I want to give a shout out to Stephen Finn, Alistair Cook, Ebony Rainford Brent, because they've really carried it on their backs, and fair play to them. I think especially Stephen Finn, who's just a really, really good broadcaster who I love listening to, and a good writer as well, and completely dispels the sort of age-old myth that is rooted in classism that, fast bowlers are big lumbering idiots. He's an incredibly insightful, sort of inward-looking and eloquent man who I just love listening to, and he's so clever. The only thing is that I've picked up as the series has gone on, he's got a tendency to moan at the end of his sentences. Have you heard this? Like, he'll say something and he's just like, yeah, and what do you think, Alistair? Or like he'll just make a slightly sexual noise. But I'm sure that can be ironed out in time, and I do hope that
I need to see this.
I hope that he gets a Sky gig at some point, because I think he's of the calibre. They also, Wisden made a good point, basically, which I wasn't aware of, that they've just had the effects mics down way too low. And actually the noise in the crowd, and the crowds have been amazing. We should have touched on that, actually. I should have touched on that in the Hasn't Been a Good Series. It's been record crowds all around, which is great. Yeah. And Wisdom were basically saying that Brisbane 100 for Joe Root, actually the noise was incredible in the stadium, and actually the entire stadium rose for him.
The Aussies rose. That's really good.
But you just didn't get that through TNT's coverage because it was too quiet. Yeah. And Wisdom encouraged viewers to seek out the Channel 7 coverage with Adam Gilchrist calling it, who's probably my favourite Aussie commentator at the minute. And you can actually just hear the roar of the crowd. So stuff like that's just really annoying. I think the the Snicko thing has been exasperated by the fact that the stump mics have just been down too low as well, which means that you have no idea if there's been an edge or not, because you can't hear anything. Usually in England you can hear.
There'll be warmth, isn't there?
You can hear a noise,
yeah.
So that's very frustrating. I think I've watched more and more of the extended highlights in the last couple of tests where I just haven't been able to actually watch it live, and they're just not very good either.
I'm finding this, as someone who's kind of getting into it, it's a very kind of specific sport. There's so much terminology and sort of perspective and history that you've got to get your head around. And I feel like you can't just apply. I feel like, because you get a lot of, for example, David Croft, is known for his F1 commentary work, but he's commentated on darts as well. And you can and you get a lot of football commentators as well that go across to F1, to rugby, to snooker, and they can sort of apply their knowledge of general sport, and that gets them by. I don't think you can do that with cricket.
No, I did some match reporting for rugby league, and I hadn't watched a rugby league game until a week before I did it. And I'm sure there'd be people out there who read the reports who could tell that I didn't know what I was on about. Yeah. But for the most part, I found that I could use the language of football to convey rugby league because it's goals, it's end to end, it's running down the clock, it's blah blah blah.
Is it goals?
Well, I didn't say goals. I didn't say goals. I can promise you. But it's score. It's running from one end of the pitch to the end.
The team with the highest score wins.
Yeah. Yes, and it's attacking. Blah 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 blah. Yeah. But cricket just doesn't work like that. And even in cricket, you can say the right words in the wrong order, and then you just sound like you don't know what you're talking about.
Absolutely. So let's cast our net forward then, Charlie, and look at what is next for both teams. I mean, we've discussed quite a lot about what's next for England from a heads rolling point of view. We've had sort of Stokes and McCullum coming out and saying that we think we're the right people to lead forward. It seems that that's going to be the case. I think it was Agnew did a thing about whoever planned the build up to the Ashes should lose their job. I don't know who that would be. You might know who that would be, and whether you agree with that.
Richard Gould. Is he under threat? Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think usually this would be the point when the coach and the captain would go, and it seems like even the managing director is going to get the opportunity to stay on with Rob Key. But so I think the media really they're not satisfied with that outcome. They need
someone needs to go.
Someone needs to go. Like, well, actually, let's just go higher and higher.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can't sack anyone in the ECB, so let's sack Keir Starmer. Or maybe we need to kill the king.
Yeah.
Or maybe we need to go and find God and ask him why he did this. I do think we're going to see a lot more stability than we usually would, and I think they'll be trusted.
But that's the thing that really frustrates me about the just generally British media is that someone's got to go.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Shut up.
You're a massive supporter of whoever the Man United manager is, and you always have been.
Yeah.
You wanted Ten Hag to stay, you wanted Amorim to stay.
I did.
But yeah,
and the media they always call for them.
Yeah, but I think you understand as a Man United fan, this is how you get stuck in these cycles. Where,
Ferguson took 6 years to win a trophy.
Yeah. And it just feels like that doesn't exist in any sport anymore. I think who will go? I think what's interesting is that with the playing and the coaching staff and everything being so uniform across formats now in a way that it hasn't before, I actually think this T20 World Cup is big for a lot of people. I think McCullum could go if the T20 World Cup's really bad, and same with Key. I think everyone just thinks that the good bits about Bazball should stay, but that the lax culture needs to be tightened up. And it's just a question of whether you can ask Stokes and McCullum to do that or whether they will do that. I think McCullum has basically already said, I'm not going to be bullied into changing. Yeah. It's like, okay, whatever, but, hire a fucking bowling coach and fielding coach. Yeah. Like, I think if McCullum sees that as too much of an imposition from above, then he does need to go, because that's just idiotic. Yeah. And I think Bazball, the spotlight with Bazball was always on, the individual shots and stuff like that, and the selections maybe. But I think what has become more apparent in this series is that actually that really relaxed mindset or vibe, which probably in a way does help the players, has gone way too far, and it's spilled into this, party culture and into this super stripped back backroom staff, backroom staff, which is just a stupid idea considering that the chat when McCullum became the all format coach is there's going to be points when he's going to have to lean on his other coaches when he needs a break. Oh,
is that a good look? No.
You look like a root vegetable.
Shout out Joe Root.
So I think then to have even less coaching staff and to not replace the assistant coach Paul Collingwood when he left in the summer was just idiotic. So personnel-wise, though, who's going to change? I mean, Bethel will stay at 3, rightly so. Brook, Root will stay in there. Stokes will stay in there. The bowling will stay largely the same. I do think they need to start to incorporate some more traditional seamers back into it, and to pick a spinner that they have faith in. But I can even see them sticking with Crawley at this point, and I think they'll probably stick with Duckett as much as he's had a stinker. He had so much credit in the bank leading up to this. This is his first bad series really since his recall. So you could see a really similar team going into it. I think Jamie Smith is an interesting one. I think, England are right to have removed him from the one-day team for now, which they have done because that clearly proved too much. And I don't think they need him in the one-day team. They've got so many good batters. But what do you do with him? I'm still of the opinion that he will have a good career as a pure batter for England. But can you really promote someone after a series like that? So there might be the case that he drops out for now in favour of a different keeper. But I do still think he's got a future as just a batter for England. So from an England perspective, what changes?
Sorting out your interview, which has definitely already happened.
We've already interviewed Billy, but I'm maybe just organising the interview that has already happened.
Yeah. What's next for Australia?
It's interesting. I think we thought we were going to see a lot more Australia retirements at the end of the series if it went well. Like they would kind of like sail off into the sunset victorious. And actually the person who has retired is the one who it hasn't gone well for in Khawaja. But I think all this series has shown for the old guard is that they've still got it. Smith and Stark, it's just like, why would they retire? They're still just incredible players. I think it's a real shame we haven't seen any Josh Hazlewood in this series, and if injuries do continue to plague him, then it might be the case that he does, sort of quietly retire in the background. And it's a shame that you haven't got to see him because he's also just really good.
Well, I remember you saying, and it took my breath away at the possibly the second test where you said that of the Trinity, you would say some would argue that Stark is the bottom of the three, which is great after what he did.
Yeah. What he done
did
for Australia. Really. Great clip, by the way. Search that out. Is it Ray Parler? No, who is it?
It might be Ray Parler, actually.
Ray Parler talking about World War II.
What they did for British.
Clearly knows
nothing about the war.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. What a day that was.
What a party they must have had when they won the Ashes.
Yeah.
Stark, what he did.
What he done, what he did.
The one that fascinates me is Cameron Green, because Australia love Cameron Green. He's just such a, he's their star child and has been for so long, but it's still not clicked with bat or ball. And I think, I was a big proponent of Bo Webster at the start of the series. I said just have them both in, which they ended up doing for the last game. Not in the way I said. You don't need one of them batting 8, and neither of them are frontline bowlers, so that was a mistake. But I do just think that Cameron Green or no Cameron Green, you got to keep Bo Webster in the team. He's had a phenomenal start to his Test match career. He's got 5 50s in 8 games, some of them in really crucial points, particularly in the West Indies series where they were under the pump and he was getting them out of issues when the top order wasn't firing. And then, I know his bowling isn't pretty, but he bowls seam up and spin. He averages 20 odd. He got three wickets in the last thing. I just think I can understand why, Australia don't usually, the one thing that we usually have over Australia historically is that we have the proper all-rounder, the guy who's a proper batsman and a proper bowler. It was Ian Botham, then it was Andrew Flintoff, and then it was Ben Stokes. And Australia typically don't have those guys, even the great Australian teams. It was always a 4-man bowling attack. So I can understand why they really want one of those. And yet they think Cameron Green's good enough to bat in the top order, which he has done when he's not been able to bowl. That's how highly they rate him. They just want to get him in. And then he also has been, they think he's good enough to bowl first change. But ultimately, we've never consistently seen that at the top level. His batting and his bowling hasn't clicked. So I think you do really have to say, if we don't want Webster and Green in the team, then it has to be Green that makes way for the time being. Even Webster bats in fields in the same position as Green at gully. They're both incredible gully fielders. We didn't see that incredible Cam Green gully catch that I predicted. So he wasn't even his usual sort of great self in the field. So I really don't see why he's the all-rounder if you think you can only have one all-rounder. I would probably still say, with Josh Inglis not really firing in this series, that I would just have Green at 6 and Webster at 7, or 5 and 6. Just have them both in there. You don't need 6 bowlers. you don't need 6 bowlers at international level. But if Webster is firing in the way that he is as a batter, then you're not really missing anything by not having a specialist batter in at 5, because that's a bit of a cushy position anyway. And then the last thing just to say would be, it's interesting, Nathan Lyon's role in the team is ever diminishing. And so maybe, but it's so they're not replacing him with another spinner, they're just replacing him with no one. And I would like to see Lyon continue if his body can hack it. And I just hope that he gets to bowl a bit more in home test matches next year.
So there we go. There's some advice from Charlie to the Australian side.
Yeah, maybe you'll be able to win 5-0 next time if you listen to me.
And the last thing that we've got written down here, we've looked at what's next for the sides, and we're sort of moving slightly away from cricket, but it's not at the end for us in cricket. And in fact, the next thing we cover probably will be cricket still. Is that what's next for us on the corridor of uncertainty? Where are we going to move? I think we've touched on it a little bit. We've given some subtle hints as to what direction we might move in, but we had a little chat about it, didn't we, Charlie? So what's next for us?
What's next for us? Yeah, we had a I would almost call it a
kitchen meeting.
You were eating a pizza at the time, but that doesn't.
And we were drinking Guinness.
It. Sure,
but it's part of it.
That's probably a French working lunch.
Yeah, a breakfast meeting for the
French. So next up is the T20 World Cup, which I think is, as we've just said, especially fascinating because it actually has so much more of a bearing on the Test team than it usually would. We're I think we're Test lovers really at heart, but it will be a good tournament. I really like T20 World Cups because they're short and sharp and there's a lot of good T20 teams at the minute. So we'll be covering that. Probably the way that will look is a preview post Sri Lanka series, focusing on England's chances and the wider tournament, then a group stage review, then a Super 8s review, and a semi-final and a final review. And then for cricket, we will cover the Test matches absolutely in the summer, and then maybe anything else that we think needs talking about. And then we've also got an exciting new venture, don't we?
We do. Yeah, absolutely. If that gave it away, I'm very sorry. But we're going to swap roles, aren't we, Charlie, in a way? Because I think we're both very big sporting fans kind of across the board. And I think if there's one sport that I don't know much about but wanted to get into was cricket. And would you say, Charlie, that the same goes for you with Formula One?
Yeah, absolutely. Those lovely chats that you've made many references to.
Yes.
You picked my brains on cricket. We've had many of them the other way around, with tennis as well, to be fair. But yeah, with F1 where, you tell me all your wisdoms and about why Lewis Hamilton isn't as good as I think he is. But yeah, I think the next F1 season should be absolutely fascinating with all the rule changes. Yeah. And we're going to give you a pod on every race.
We absolutely are.
Let's say it, so then we have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Make the rod for our back.
Yeah.
Make our bed so we can lie in it. But yeah, I absolutely think we should do a podcast for every race. And you can act as more like the host. I can act as
God help me.
The Gary Neville. You, Martin Tyler, I'll be Gary Neville on the Gary Neville podcast.
I'm glad you didn't say Peter Drury.
Well, why not Peter Drury?
No, I actually like him, to be fair.
Yeah, I quite like him.
Have to be like...
Wordsmith.
So what phantasmagorical Greek oracle did
you'd have
smite down to the gods into this game today?
Yes, absolutely. Which I would love it if you did do that. So yeah, we're going to do a little bit of F1. We're going to cover the 2026 season, which, as Charlie said, big raft of rule changes. So the field could be quite jumbled up. We could see, the early murmurings is that 2 teams, and we'll come on to this, have stolen a march on the rest of the field. So yeah, we're going to do some F1 after the T20 World Cup. So it's not that we're going away now that the Ashes is done. You're going to have to put up with us for a little bit longer, I think.
Yeah, and thank you for putting up with us today, because my audacity's clocking in at 1 hour 39. And that's before we've even slotted in this interview with Billy, which we definitely know how long it is because it's happened. But yeah, it's the end of the series, and you won't hear from us for a month or so.
It's a bumper special.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for listening. I need a piss, so I'm going to go for a piss.
So do I.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Goodbye.